oh, I can't possibly charge more because people won't pay that amount. Well, have you tried? And they go, no. 30 days later, I looked at our profit and loss account for that line in our revenue, and it had gone up by 2.5 times. Every person I've made this bet with, and you're talking hundreds of business owners, they have always closed at least one client, if not more, at whatever price point we've agreed.
Welcome to Homegrown CEO, the podcast for entrepreneurs, leaders, and business builders seeking actionable insights to grow their ventures and themselves. I'm your host, Matt Colborne, and today's episode is all about strategy, pricing, and self-worth. We'll soon welcome business coach and author Robin Waite to the podcast. After huge success running his own marketing agency, Robin is now the founder of Fearless Business, a practice focused on helping people package their expertise, price for value, and build a business that actually works financially. So whether you're a business owner desperately trying to increase revenue, or a solopreneur exploring new ways to maximize your earnings, listen on for Robin's best advice, frameworks, and lived examples when it comes to charging what you're worth. Let's get started. We can start the conversation off talking about small business owners and some of the challenges that they often have around, do they charge by the hour? And is that a logical way? And is that a fair way? Or should they be thinking about how they price their services differently?
Yeah, great question. So I have a very strong opinion on this, that charging by the hour is a very unethical way to charge, because most people are moral, upstanding sort of citizens, and they wouldn't necessarily do this. But the mere fact that you could tag on more hours, because ultimately, how do you make more money when you're charging by the hour? Well, you've got to sell more sessions, more hours of your time. And so it doesn't always operate in the client's best interests. And one of the examples, which I always give as well, because there's like multiple reasons why hourly rates are fundamentally flawed, in my opinion. So imagine if you had 3 web designers. Well, you'll hear web design come up a lot, because obviously that's my background, my experience of running that business for 12 years. So imagine we had 3 web designers. Web designer number 1 comes along and they say, right, Matt, I'm going to sell you a website and it's going to cost $50 an hour. I reckon it'll probably take 20 hours. And you do mental maths and you're like, right, $1,000, that sounds about fair. So off they toddle. And then about 3 months later, they come back and they show you the website and you're like, well, this looks awful. And where's the blog and the shopping cart, which I asked for? And they say, oh, well, I didn't realize those were part of the brief. So I'll add them on, but it's going to cost you another 10 hours. And so immediately you're like, well, hang on a second, we agreed $1,000, and so web designer goes, well, they reluctantly agreed to go and bolt on those extras and make the website look a little bit better. And what they'd actually neglected to tell you during the sales conversation, because they got a gift of the gab, they're a great salesperson. They neglected to tell you that they'd only just started out, and that because they're not charging enough for it, that they've got too many clients on board. And that's why it took them 3 months to come back with a dog's dinner of a website, But now they're annoyed because, frankly, they're resentful because they didn't get the extra 10 hours and they're having to do all this extra work. So, and you're annoyed because you didn't get what you wanted in the time and everything else. Right. So there's our first clue already, that hourly rates are a bit of a flawed business model, because it just generally breeds resentment from both parties. The second clue is web designer number 2 comes along. Now, web designer number 2 has been doing it for quite a long period of time, but they don't know what Matt and Robin know about pricing. So they're also still charging $50 an hour. And because they've been doing it a long time, they've got plenty of experience. They come back a week later, they've got this good looking website, and they're like, well, we put the blog on there, but you don't need a shopping cart because you're not quite ready for that for your business. So they're using their expertise to sell you advice. And they say, well, actually, billable hours, it only took me, 10 hours. So it's $500. Well, hang on a second. So the guy who has more experience, does it faster and does a better job, gets paid half what the inexperienced gift of the gab sales guy, managed to sell the website for. So again, there's our second clue, that hourly rates are fundamentally flawed because it doesn't favor experience and quality and speed. And then here's the third one. The third web designer comes along. Now, she's a website ninja, right? She knows everything there is to know about lead gen, websites, and the online space. And she says, listen, Matt, I'll knock you up a website in 72 hours. And I reckon within 30 days, it will be getting you 15 to 20 fully qualified leads for your brand, your business. If it doesn't do that within 30 days, I'll refund you all of the money you've invested in me, and I'll give you $1,000 for wasting your time. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. And how much?
$10,000. So it's significantly more expensive, but because she's so confident in her abilities, and she's like, screw the blog, screw the shopping cart, you just need a well-designed landing page that's going to convert, and generate inquiries to your business, and we'll find how to get you in front. So you can see that the value proposition is completely different when you shift from hourly rates into results and outcomes.
So for someone that's just starting out, how do you figure out then what your pricing strategy is going to be and where you sort of fit in that value equation in the market?
Yeah, so a lot of people turn to sort of looking at their competitors, which I think is something we're going to chat about a bit later on. But the simple equation is to essentially kind of work out, like just go through the numbers, make a little bit of a plan. And you can actually, within sort of, 5 very simple questions, you can figure out how to set your prices. So essentially you've got to, rather than think about, right, we're going to price to attract and enroll clients, i.e. generally be competitive with your pricing and go in at the lower end of it, you've got to think about pricing for profit. So one of the things I always say, is a bit cliched, but everybody always looks at the goal of businesses to attract and enroll all of the clients. You can get all of the clients in, as many clients you can do. And so we end up on this sales cycle of doom, like chasing the next sale and getting the next client on board. And we see that as a sign of success, being constantly busy chasing. But actually, when you think about it, if you just charge a little bit more, you've got more time to deliver a better product or service to your end client, which ultimately, they get better results and outcomes for, which means that they're probably more likely to stick around and spend more money with you on the back end. So, rather than the rule being, right, the goal of business is to attract and enroll all of the clients, the rule becomes, right, let's build a profitable and sustainable business. The only way to do that is to confidently charge more than what your competitors are charging. And I always say, like, essentially you've got 3 options when you're choosing your prices. You can be the cheapest, but nobody really wants to be the cheapest, because what does that signal to the market? But some people think that's how you attract clients. You can be middle of the road, because you don't want to be seen as the cheapest, but you also don't want to be seen as the most expensive, because you think that will put people off. Or you can be the most expensive. So coming back to our humble web designers, and let's say there's 30 in your local town building, happily building websites to varying degrees. There can and will only always be one who is the most expensive in the market. And when you look at that one who is the most expensive in the market, generally they've got more and better case studies. They've got lots of reviews and testimonials from happy clients. They've probably been around for quite a long period of time, so they're well established, and they pick off a lot of referrals from other people. When you ask for a local web designer, their name keeps on popping up. But there are also some clues here. They are the most expensive, and they're still able to attract and enroll clients, right? So that's where we want to err towards, is be what, not, you don't have to be the most expensive, but at least be in the top sort of 10% pricing wise. But ensure that when you set your prices up, you sort of do it for profitability.
And you're working with a lot of different business owners. You're coaching business owners and smaller operators. In your experience, when someone has sort of really come around and sort of finally made that mindset shift to the way they price, what's been driving that for them?
Yeah, I mean, so ultimately what it comes down to is there's values and belief systems which those business owners have created for themselves. We're as entrepreneurs, we're learning on the job. We're trying to figure out how this all works. So we make some assumptions, and then we kind of, take our logical first step based on our best knowledge. And unfortunately, what happens is that, it's a lot of those beliefs that hold people back. So, and assumptions. So they're like, for example, I can't possibly charge more because people won't pay that amount. And then the next question I always ask them is, well, have you tried? And they go, no. Well, did you not think you should try before you decide that that's not going to work for you? So a lot of the time it's for those entrepreneurs, it's about realizing that, somebody out there is charging more than me, and they're still able to get clients. So we show some evidence to begin with that it's possible that you could charge more. The second thing is that they then also have to look inwardly at their own value. So, the third web designer example, the website ninja that I told you about, she was very confident in how she articulated the value. She added the money back guarantee in there. And again, if you ask a lot of business owners, would you be confident enough in your product or service to offer 100% money back guarantee? Immediately they're like, oh no, because what if the client does, this, or if they don't follow the instructions, or if something doesn't quite go to plan, or nothing's predictable in life? Again, they come up with all the reasons and excuses. But I'm like, no, you have to be sold on your idea before you take it to market and try and sell it to somebody else. So essentially, it's just breaking down all of these assumptions and old beliefs and showing people that they're, with evidence that there are ways to gradually raise your prices. And again, it's not just right, let's go out there and 5x our prices, although there are some examples where I've been able to, I've done it and I've helped other people do it. Normally, it's like a graduated approach to sort of incrementally moving towards being the most expensive in the market.
But Robin, even when you've got a successful business or practice and you're really kicking some goals, why does it feel so uncomfortable to increase your prices?
Do you want to go down into like the psychology of it, or
I'd love to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so many people are struggling with putting their pricing up when they're one of the star players in their market. They're still reluctant, and it feels incredibly uncomfortable to want to increase your prices, even incrementally.
Yeah. So there's what most people don't realize is, especially small business owners, because they are the business effectively. But you have to remember that there's two different entities here. There's the small business owner and the business, and they are two different, entities within what they're trying to build here with their life. So you take the small business owner, for example, who has their own money worries, and those money worries can come from way back into their childhood even, and they're growing up and their parents used to have arguments in the house about, oh, we can't afford to move house. We can't afford those new sneakers, which you want. We just can't go on holiday this year because we don't have the money. So, and all of the sort of the stories that we grew up with, coupled with then for a lot of people who then, in teenage years start to think, well, I don't want to do it how my parents did it because all they did was moan about money. So I'm going to break out and then, right, I'm going to go and get a paper round, or I'm going to go and work in the local cafe or pub or something like that. So then we've got the story that money is scarce. Then we've got the next chapter in the book, which is, if I want money, I've got to go and work hard for it, because not only are we doing school, we're also doing all these extra jobs as well. Then we turn into adults, and I don't know what it's like in other countries, but certainly in the UK, there's this push for people to go towards university, where you come out of university then with a shed load of debt. So now their money story is based around starting off adult life with a ton of debt, right? And so the story continues. Money is always a struggle all through their life. So here they are in their business. They walk in, they open the door to their business and bring in their money worries with it. And then all of a sudden you couple that up with their business, and the business has money worries. So that's like the very light version of like the psychology behind what's going on. So what we have to do is, instead, you can have your money worries over here. That's absolutely fine. When you open the door up, unlock the door to your premises, you have to just be create a very strong, stable base for the business version of you. Because what happens is, if you walk in with those rocky foundations, your business is going to have rocky foundations. So instead, what we need to know is that cash flow in a business is like oxygen, and you need to feed that business entity oxygen regularly. Deplete it of oxygen with your wobbly money mindset, and all of a sudden the business falls over. And of course, everyone's like, oh, why didn't this work out? Well, it was you. It wasn't the business that didn't work. It was you that wasn't working for the business properly. So we show up, we treat our business, we give it stable foundations, we feed it with new clients, cash. We keep some of that cash because, again, it's cliched, but everybody's always like, oh, I've got a cash flow problem. Bullshit. They don't have a cash flow problem at all, because cash is flowing in. It's flowing straight back out again, right? What they've got is two other problems: making more money problem and a keeping that cash problem. So you have to completely shift your own mindset to give the business a stable foundation. You can lock the door up at the end of the day, you've done your shift, walk away, and you can still have your own money shit going on. That's absolutely fine. Turn up. You've got to have a very business, so be very business minded about it, so your business is built for profitability.
And Robin, with services-based businesses that are often tendering or pitching or preparing proposals for work, and you've got this pricing narrative running along in the background, when they lose work and they don't win that contract or they don't win that proposal, is it often about price, or do you think it's actually rarely about price as a reason why someone didn't win that job?
I would say 9 times out of 10, it's got nothing to do with price. It's normally down to their ability to be able to articulate the value around it. So you used a really important word there, proposal. So a lot of service client businesses will hide behind proposals because they don't want to have that difficult conversation, and it's not even a pricing conversation, it's a sales conversation. And so what they do is the person will say, well, can you put that into a proposal? That's a polite no, because we can't really understand the value of it. And we're hoping that magically, when you send us that PDF doc through, that it's going to all of a sudden be like, oh my God, look at all the value which they can actually deliver. Because, we weren't able to articulate during the initial consultation. And quite often, actually, what happens with proposals is it causes more confusion than anything else. So first of all, and this is so, so important, if somebody asks you for a proposal, you have to push back and say, well, what is it you would like to see in that proposal? Is there anything that we've discussed or not discussed today that you would like to see in a proposal? Because we can go through it now. But really, there's a very simple framework, which, again, is very well known. It's called the BANT framework. So budget, authority, need, and timing. So when you're going through and doing a sales consultation with somebody, they might push back on budget. You might have the pricing discussion or loosely have the pricing discussion, and they go, "Ooh, that's expensive," right? But that's just one of the four elements. That's just around budget. So they'll make it about budget and pricing because that's kind of feels like the obvious place to go. But I always say, ignore the budget thing and then open the discussion up about authority, need, and timing. Do you have the authority to make this decision today? No. Oh, what? So the CFO needs to be here in this conversation, right? Before I send the proposal, then why don't you, me, and the CFO get on a call today and and talk about this? So authority, need. Sometimes people think they need something, but actually the pain that whatever that challenge is just not big enough really to warrant. Again, it's not just about spending the money on it, but it might be the time required to make the changes, for example, and the resources required in the business to make those changes. So how big is the pain that they're actually experiencing? How long have they been experiencing it for? How soon do they want to get it fixed? These are all like super important questions to ask around need. And then obviously timing. Is this something like you need urgently, like today? Okay, well then the budget makes sense. Or is this something you're just shopping around for and might be looking to do in 6 months or a year's time? Well, look, there's no point in me sending a proposal to you because you're not in a place to make a decision today. So again, we want to kind of bat off the whole idea around proposals and have that pricing, and value conversation up front on consultations.
So when you're talking to someone about budget and authority, what are some ways to get that client or prospect to help coach you on where the pricing needs to land?
Really good question. So one of the ways to do that essentially is, so again, sometimes people are like, oh, well, I'll have to go away and think about a price and put it into that proposal. But I always bat it back. So were you to ask me a question about how much is this going to cost, I'd say, well, what's your budget? Have you thought about what your budget is? But also you have to put it in terms of like results and outcomes. So break it right down and say, well, listen, cue me and give me an example and we'll sort of workshop around it. Give me an imaginary product that we're selling.
Oh, let's focus on building Webflow websites to start with.
Okay, so what's the purpose of the website? Which, let's imagine I'm the Webflow developer.
I'm an interior design firm, and I want to have a new website to showcase my work and help funnel me opportunities for some new business.
Fantastic. So how much is the average client worth to you, by the way, Matt?
Oh, about $12,000 for an initial engagement.
$12,000. Okay. And just out of curiosity, what revenue goals have you set for yourself on a monthly basis?
Oh, we want to do about 60 to 65,000 a month.
So five-ish clients a month, roughly. Okay.
Yeah.
And what's your conversion rate from meeting a prospect to turning them into a 12K client?
Well, they seem to take a long time to kind of pull through and decide, but out of probably about 5 or 6 customers that we talk to, we probably win about 1 or 2 and get started within the first couple of months of talking to them. And then some of those clients also come back, a year later. And are they a win from the original time we spoke to them, or do we sort of look at them as a win again in the month that they eventually fall in?
Okay, so we're talking roughly 15 consultations. That's what you need to get those 5 clients booked at 12K to give you a 60K roughly sort of monthly revenue. Okay, cool. Just out of curiosity, how much would you be prepared to spend to get those 15 calls booked, the 5 clients and the 60K per month? What would be fair, do you think?
Probably about 5 or 6K.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's all.
Does that feel fair?
Well, it's all I want to spend today.
I mean, that translates to roughly half a million a year in revenue, or more even. Nearly 700K's worth of revenue. 5K feels a bit cheap to me.
You think so?
What would you be willing to spend if we could guarantee that result?
Oh, probably 30,000.
30,000. Okay. Well, the good news is we can build it for 25. We can have that rolled out within the next 2 weeks. And we will keep working on it until you're generating those 15 leads per month. So it's a process of the art of negotiation, I think, is kind of something which a lot of people don't learn about. And actually, there's a really great book called Never Split the Difference by an author called Chris Voss. I don't know if you've ever come across it.
No, not yet.
Chris Voss used to be he was an ex-FBI hostage negotiator, and now he's switched into sort of teaching business owners about sort of negotiating contracts and deals and things like that. And he always says that if you open with something, you've kind of lost leadership immediately in the conversation. And I think this is where a lot of service client businesses get tripped themselves up, because they're there basically as order takers. What do you want me to do? Okay, I'll do it. What's your budget? Yeah, we'll do it for the budget. And that's it. And then next thing you know, they've lost 20K because they just did what Matt and his interior design business wanted you to do, right? But we have to remember, as service client business owners, people are coming to us because we're the experts. Our clients need us more than we need them. And therefore, you have to assume that position of leadership all the way through, not just in the sales conversation, but right the way through from that first point of contact, delivering, doing the sales calls, starting the onboarding, delivering the interior design work, making sure the customer is happy with everything at the end of it, taking that video case study or review or testimonial from them, and any aftercare which happens before you then even think about moving on to the next customer. But you have to take that position of leadership throughout. And part of that means that in the negotiation, you have to be very clear on what is it that the other person needs. If you don't understand that, you have no right to put a proposal out to somebody.
Well, the whole reason I got into interior design was so I didn't have to have those types of tough conversations with people. But for anyone that's listening along who wants some help to calm their nerves and restore some confidence, what are some practical tips, Robin, that you can help us with to improve the way we have those tough conversations and negotiations with our prospects?
So the first one is just to be very clear on exactly where your value stands. So I mentioned earlier on about the one-page business plan, for example. But as a small business owner, just a very simple example, imagine you've got a coach and they want to make a six-figure business, 100K a year. I'm just making the numbers easy for myself so I don't have to think too hard, Matt, on a Monday morning. Next question would be, well, how much are you charging? And they might say, well, $1,000 for my coaching program. Okay, great. So you need 100 clients a year. And then immediately their eyes pop out of their head. So we're working through something called capacity-based pricing. Just a really simple framework. Revenue goal divided by your current price. That tells you how many clients you need. That's your capacity. And so then you might follow that up with question number 4, which is very simple. Okay, well, if that's not realistic, 100 clients is too many. What would be a realistic number of clients for you to work with on an annual basis? And they might say, well, 20. 20 feels about right. Okay, take the big number, 100K, divide it by 20. Now we've got to figure out how to get you to 5K. And again, it's not just about, some people do undersell themselves so much that you can just 5x your prices. And that's just because they've been underselling themselves. But I'm more of a fan of when you raise your prices, that gives you more bandwidth to stack more value into that package. What more can we offer the client?
You have been in the agency world yourself. You ran a very successful web development agency. Take us through the pricing changes you decided to look at in how you position that business in the market.
Yeah, so the websites for a very long period of time, we made all the mistakes. We charged hourly. We tried to package them up. But one of the biggest lessons which I learned, we used to do logo design as well as one of our products. And so that, again, it was like design agency ping pong, where we'd quote a client an hourly rate for the logo. Then it would get pinged back. They'd approve the proposal. We kind of take the brief. We'd send them out the composites. They'd say, we would like the color in that one, and so that elongated process, we'd go back and forward for 2 or 3 months. And I was like, I could tell the clients were frustrated. And at the end of it, we didn't bill for the advice because I didn't know better back then. Didn't know what I know now. And so we would just bill for the artwork, and it might be 10 hours, and we'd walk away with a few £100. And I thought, it has to be a better way than this. So I worked out the 7 steps in our process that I took every client through. So just simply working out those 7 steps made the project management process better. We knew when we had to interject. And so we reduced it from a 3-month process down to 6 weeks. I was like, God, there has to be a better way than this. Like, and I said to my business partner at the time, I was like, imagine if we could do like a logo design in a day, and client walks away with everything, the electronic version of the logo, two-page style guide, and they're happy with that. And he's like, can't be done. I was like, I bet it can. So just as I was formulating that idea, I read a book called Built to Sell by John Warrillow. That book was, honestly, it changed my life because it solidified this concept that I had into a very well articulated story. Again, it's a matter of timing. Same time, an existing client came and said, we've got a new product launching on Tuesday. And it was like a Thursday or something, or Wednesday. New product launching on Tuesday. We'd love for you to design the logo. And I was like, I'm sorry, I don't think we can do it. No, come on. Then we want to work with you. We want you to do this. So there must be something you can do. And I was like, well, got this idea for this like logo design, one day branding workshop. I get one of my designers in if he's free. I'll run the show, but you need to come in and we work. And he's like, yeah, whatever time you need, I'll come in. So the next day we ran it on the Friday. But what was interesting on when I sold it to him, he was like, how much is it? And I was like, I don't know. And I just put out a number. I put out £1,500, which was 3 times what our effective day rate previously. And he said, yeah, no problem. Send me your bank details. I'll transfer it tonight and I'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, and it blew my mind. One, we charged more. We'd taken payment up front.
Yeah.
We had a 7-step process, which we delivered. It was a bit clunky, but we got him out the door at 6:30 the next evening with the logo he was happy with and the 2-page style guide. And then a few weeks later, I'd started working with some mentors, another Aussie actually, Daniel Priestley, and he introduced me to a product guy called Nick. And Nick called me out of the blue and he said, "Oh, Robin, I've heard about this one day branding workshop thing. I've got a client who I think it'd be perfect for." And well, tell me about it, Nick. And he's like, "Well, literally, we want you to drive up to York tomorrow, which is like the other end of the country. It's like, I don't know, Perth to Sydney. I don't know if that's good geography or not, but like a long way."
Yeah.
And I was like, nah, for £1,500, I don't really want to do that, Nick. I'm not up for that. So he said, give me 5 minutes. He calls me back literally 5 minutes later and he said, "Rob, you're going to want to get in the car." I said, I've booked you for 18,000.
Wow.
And I was like, "Right, I'm in the car, Nick. Where do you want me to go? Give me the address." And again, on the way up there, get an email notification come through that the invoice has been paid. Nick wanted 20%, so I shipped him his 3K as well. And then we delivered the workshop. Now that was an outlier. It doesn't happen often. But again, there was, in that short space of about a month, I just had all these epiphanies, just gifts handed to me through, opportunities. And the trouble is most business owners, they are just not tuned into seeing when these opportunities crop up and asking for what they're worth.
So for people working along at the moment and they're considering some of the pricing moves that they might be able to make right now after listening to this episode, from the type of clients that you're working with and helping, what are some of the biggest objections that you're hearing when someone's starting to make this change in their offering, and how do you sort of help respond to that and work through it for them?
Yeah, the first biggest objection is around their existing client base. Oh, I can't put my prices up because my existing clients will leave, which is fine. But we have to remember there's 2 different types of clients. There's our existing clients and there's also new clients. So when it comes to existing clients, we have to treat it almost like a PR campaign or a second sales cycle. I think a lot of the time you'll see people when they're communicating price rises, they'll just, blast out an email or a group message to their customers. And is it any wonder? Nobody's going to write back to you and say, "Oh, thank you so much for putting my prices up." You always get the naysayers and the people who are going to moan about the prices going up, the people who don't really get the value. And so it can be a very negative experience. So I always encourage people, if you're communicating price rises, at least give your customers the respect of having a conversation with them and explaining to them, just saying, "Look, we're reviewing all of our accounts. Our prices are going to be going up from the 1st of September. Your new rate card's going to be X." And then you have that opportunity for them to ask you questions and stuff. It's a respectful thing to do. But the second thing, though, is, again, the assumptions that if we put our prices up, then clients are going to leave. Well, they probably will. But from my experience now, having done this for the past decade, it's never as many as you think it is. Because a lot of your existing clients already know that you're undercharging. Again, they're just never going to tell you that, because they know that if they tell you that, you're going to put their prices up, right? So as an example, we had a series of stand-up arguments with my business partner. And by the way, me and Caleb we're still best friends. We've known each other for 25 years. We worked together at a business before we set up our own business. And stand-up arguments during the 2008 financial crisis, when everybody was driving prices down to win business. And I was like, I could see them going out of business. I'm like, "Caleb, this is the wrong thing to do. We need to charge more." And he was like, oh, I'll put them up by 10 or 20%, and we only put them up recently, so we can't possibly do that. I was like, who made up these stupid rules that you can only put your price up by 10% once a year, right?
Yeah.
In January. So I was like, no, Caleb, I think we're going to do something more drastic. So behind his back, I went and put up our care plans from £10 a month to £50 a month.
Okay.
So 5x the price. And what was interesting is 40% of our clients did leave.
Okay.
Not all of them, right? So 30 days later, I looked at our profit and loss account for that line in our revenue, and it had gone up by 2.5 times.
Right.
It's like, brilliant. This is what we wanted. But there was a Brucey bonus on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
Our support calls are dropped by 80%.
Yeah.
Right. So 40% of the clients leave, revenue goes up 2.5 times. But all those clients who left took all of their bitching, moaning, and whining with them because they just couldn't see the value that we were already delivering, even at £10 a month. And, so that one decision led to us doubling our revenue that year overall in the business, because I applied similar principles to all of the web packages, the branding packages and everything else.
And so how do you take on that leap, for someone running their own business at the moment? They want to get to a better business, fewer clients, more revenue, less stress. You're right in the depth of that hustle and chasing every lead and opportunity. How do you take that leap and charge more, less clients, and build a better business?
So we have this argument between the head and the heart when it comes to pricing. So we work out our prices intellectually, and our brain is very good at kind of talking us out of stuff as well. It's actually designed as a survival mechanism to keep us alive. But the reality is, in business, there's only two things that can go wrong in business. You can look a bit dumb, or you can lose some money, and both are recoverable. So our intellect, generally speaking, you end up kind of trying to rationalize your prices, and the auction starts to devalue yourself. But what's interesting, I've noticed, is when people then tap into their heart, they know, they feel it, that they're undercharging. And so one of the exercises which I go through is something called a pricing auction. So let's talk about that coach that was charging $1,000, say, and he wants to get to 5K. Well, again, he might not have the confidence just to jump straight from 1 to 5K, but he also knows that 1K is too cheap and he has to figure out how to get there. So what we do is I'll go through a series of numbers with him. I'll just say $1,200, $1,500, $1,800, $2,000, $2,500, and then his something will shift. Body language wise, sometimes people smile, sometimes people will make an audible like, oh, or their body language will shrink and they'll shrug and sink back. But there's always like a tell when the heart goes, no, that's too expensive. The brain thought, the intellect thought $1,000 was too expensive. The heart knows that 2.5K is about right. And that's where we make a simple decision. Do you like to play just inside or just outside your comfort zone? Okay. And that coach might say, well, I prefer to play just inside. Okay. Well, let's try pitching the next 10 people at $2,200. And I always have a bet with clients at this point. I'm like, if you pitch 10 people at the price we've agreed and you don't get any clients, I'll pay you the money. I'll pay you the $2,200. So again, I introduced this concept of, well, they can't lose at that point. If they don't get any pitches, say yes, new prospects, well, at least they're going to get $2,200 from me. And I have never lost that bet. Every person I've made this bet with, and you're talking hundreds of business owners, they've always closed at least one client, if not more, at whatever price point we've agreed.
Well, that's good. And for everyone listening along to Homegrown CEO today, Robin's going to extend that guarantee to all of our listeners as well that follows his advice.
100%. It's either going to cost me loads of money or there's going to be some very happy people out there.
Absolutely. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Robin, is that we've seen with a lot of services businesses recently pressure from the market to decrease prices because of the role of AI, even though in early stages, the AI coming into service businesses' workflow, particularly marketing-based businesses. How do we look at the role that AI is having in efficiencies that it's bringing for work delivery, but at the same time continue to strategically increase pricing for outcome-based work?
Yeah, really great question. I mean, AI's not reached anywhere near like mass market adoption yet. So we're not even at the tipping point where I think it's really going to wildly affect work and pricing and things like that. I think at the end of the day, that there's certain expertise which, coaches, consultants, freelancers still hold that the average mere mortal human being or business owner, doesn't get or comprehend just yet. We're probably a year into a 30-year AI wave at the moment. So it's very, very early. In terms of pricing, I mean, I think the way to look at it is, we're seeing now like one person businesses doing $1 million.
Yeah.
right? Or more in some cases. I think we're going to see some literally one-person businesses doing 8, 9, 10 figures before long, in our generation. So I think you have to adopt it and ride with it and leverage AI to extract more value. So remember where I was talking about raise your prices, but stack more value. How can you leverage AI to extract and include more of that value in whatever outcomes and results you're selling to customers?
Robin, you've given us some great advice today so far. To help sum it up for people that are listening, what are 3 key pieces of advice that someone should take away from this conversation so far?
Yeah, I mean, the first one has to be don't look or listen to your competitors, because ultimately, if you're anchoring against your competitors' pricing, and Dave's copying Trisha's prices, Trisha's copying Stuart's prices, Stuart's copying Darren's prices, and Darren's looking back at Dave's prices. Well, which of those 4 people are experts in pricing? Probably none of them. And so you don't know. The assumption is, oh, well, because everybody's charging that must be the going rate. But we don't know that they're actually making any profit. So you could be about to essentially launch a flawed business model by copying your competitors. So you have to figure out what is the right amount for you to charge based on your capacity, based on every time you sell a unit of that capacity that it makes profit for your business. The second one as well, we just touched on it, was that your head's always going to undercut like your heart. And it's really hard because you'll have people giving you advice, you'll see videos online giving you, telling you something else. And every time, just tune in for that signal of disappointment when somebody says yes at a price and you're like, oh God, they said yes. That's a good, clear sign that you are undercharging, okay? If that, feeling comes up. And then the final one is that actually, rather than kind of trying to enroll all of the clients, actually a business where you've got double the income and half the clients is really the dream business, because with double the income, half the clients, it means you've got half the client fulfillment to do, you've got half the admin, half the finance, half the sales calls, half the marketing. How many business owners are tying themselves in knots these days because of like social media and digital marketing, videos and long short form content, LinkedIn, you name it, right? It is a minefield. Well, if you've got half the clients, half the sales calls, half the marketing, well, you don't need to do any of that shit. You just carry on like doing stuff that fills you up. Go down the archery range on a Friday and like go and hang out with your kids more often. There's great businesses where I know people are only working like 6 to 20 hours a week and living a really wonderful life, making decent money and spending more time with their family.
The Homegrown CEO podcast is all about great stories from the kitchen bench to the boardroom. Before you go, Robin, we'd love to hear what your kitchen bench moment was. Was there a turning point in your career or a mindset shift that really started it all for you?
Yeah, well, we touched on the real turning point was that decision to sort of 5x our pricing on the hosting fees, then backed up with the one-day branding workshop. That made a massive difference. But I'm going to share a different one actually, because we have covered those in my coaching business especially. And this really backs up that head versus heart thing. So I practice what I preach through my career as a coach over the last 10 years. And I once I'd gone through the packaging up process of sort of, what's the dream outcome my clients want? Well, double income, half the clients. How long does it take to deliver that? Well, roughly about 3 to 6 months. How much am I going to charge for that? And I started off charging, I think, about £1,500 for my first coaching package. Practice what I preach, gradually incremented it. And I hit this really interesting like pivot point where I was trying to bust through this £3,000 barrier. I got stuck, and I got no shame in admitting this because I hope it's helpful for somebody else, where I was trying to go from basically £2,800 up to just £3,200. And I could not sell a coaching package for about 6 months. And it was getting to that point of like, can I actually, like, am I legit now? Am I all of the stuff that I've been telling people? And it's the only time I've ever reduced my price. I went back down to 2,800, so it wasn't a huge reduction. Started selling again. And then I don't know why, but for some reason, my confidence just went through the roof. It just lit a fire. Next price rise, I went to 3.6, then up to 3.8, then like 4.5K. And I need to put my prices up again, now. But it was just weird hitting that imaginary glass ceiling for some reason that I created myself, drop it back down, build your confidence up. And then when I busted through it, all of a sudden it unlocked like the next level.
Your coaching practice is called Fearless Business. We'll put the details below if anyone wants to get in touch. And your latest book, Fearless Pricing, is out now. Robin, thanks so much for joining us on Homegrown CEO.
That's my absolute pleasure. Thank you, Matt.
Pricing, unfortunately, isn't an exact science. Just remember this. When it comes to clients, quality beats quantity every single time. Thank you for joining us today on the Homegrown CEO podcast. I hope my conversation with Robin has inspired you to review your own pricing model and perhaps raise that price tag just a little bit. And if you're hungry for more, become a member of our exciting Homegrown CEO community. You'll be able to connect with Robin and dozens of other exceptional entrepreneurs, and will receive access to exclusive bonus content from our conversation today. You can click the link in the show notes to join us at a discounted rate. Until then, make sure you subscribe to the show to be the first to know when our next episode drops. We look forward to you joining us then. In the meantime, increase your prices, charge what you're worth. I've been your host, Matt Colborn.